He had signed death warrants without hesitation. He had watched empires burn and felt nothing. He had looked his most dangerous enemies in the eye and smiled. But the moment a little boy with a gap-toothed grin crashed into his legs inside a flower shop on a rainy Seoul afternoon, and a familiar voice called that boy's name, Kang Ji-hoon felt something crack open inside his chest that no bullet had ever managed to reach. And that was before he saw her face. Kang Ji-hoon did not become the most feared criminal boss in Seoul by being careless. He built his empire the hard way, through strategy, through sacrifice, through 2 decades of decisions that most men wouldn't survive making once. By 35, his name commanded silence in rooms full of dangerous people. Politicians returned his calls before their wives. Police commissioners attended his charity events and pretended not to know what he was. Rival organizations marked his territory on their maps and left it alone. He had everything a man in his position was supposed to want. He felt nothing about any of it. The black armored SUV moved through Seoul's rain-soaked streets, wipers keeping time like a slow heartbeat. Ji-hoon sat in the back, saying nothing, jaw tight, eyes fixed somewhere past the window. His 3 most trusted men filled the silence around him with logistics. "The ceremony venue is confirmed," said Park, his head of security, not looking up from his tablet. "Chairman Yoon's team finalized the guest list this morning. 412 confirmed attendees." "Security sweep of the venue is scheduled for Thursday," added Ryu, his operations lead. "We'll need an extra perimeter team given the number of allied families attending." "There's still the matter of the floral arrangements," said Min, his personal assistant, with the careful tone of a man delivering information he suspects won't be welcomed. "The original florist terminated their contract yesterday. Apparently a dispute with the venue coordinator. We need a confirmed replacement within 48 hours, or Hye Jin's event planner will escalate directly to Chairman Yoon." Ji-hoon said nothing. "Sir, I can have someone handle it immediately if there's a shop nearby." Ji-hoon's voice was quiet, flat, the voice of a man who had run out of energy for pretending. "Yes, sir, high-rated. They specialize in large event arrangements. I'll send someone. I'll go." He said it the way he said most things, without room for debate. The car went silent. All 3 men turned to look at him. Park recovered first. "Sir, your security protocol requires a minimum advance team of update the protocol." Ji-hoon finally turned from the window, and something in his eyes stopped Park mid-sentence. "I need 10 minutes that have nothing to do with Chairman Yoon, or his daughter, or the alliance, or the wedding, or which families are sitting in which row. I need 10 minutes that belong to me." He held Park's gaze. "Is that too much?" No one answered. No one ever did when he looked like that. The SUV changed direction. If anyone in that vehicle had known what those 10 minutes were about to cost, what they were about to give back, they might have said something. They might have turned the car around, taken a different route, found a different florist. But they didn't know. And fate, it turns out, doesn't give warnings. The flower shop sat on a quiet corner, its windows warm against the gray afternoon. Brooks Blooms was painted above the door in clean, elegant letters. Ji-hoon stepped inside alone, leaving 2 men on the pavement outside with instructions to stay there. The smell of the shop hit him immediately. Roses, lilies, something green and alive. It was the most peaceful smell he'd encountered in longer than he could remember. He moved slowly through the aisles without really seeing anything, his mind still circling the wedding, the alliance, the life that had been arranged for him by people who never once asked what he actually wanted. He was standing in front of a display of white orchids, not looking at them when the collision happened. Something small and fast came around the corner of the aisle and hit him squarely in the stomach at full speed. Ji-hoon looked down. A little boy was sitting on the floor, clutching a bunch of yellow sunflowers that had somehow survived the impact intact. He looked up at Ji-hoon with wide eyes, startled, but not remotely afraid, and then, unbelievably, grinned. It was the kind of grin that could stop a room. Missing one front tooth, slightly lopsided, completely unguarded. Ji-hoon stood completely still. "I'm so sorry, mister." The boy scrambled to his feet, brushing off his knees with great seriousness. "I wasn't supposed to run, I know the rule. But the sunflowers are my mom's favorite, and I wanted to bring them to her really, really fast. And I didn't see you because you're—" He stopped and looked up. And up. "You're very tall." Ji-hoon stared at him, the boy's eyes, the angle of his jaw, the way he held his chin slightly raised, like he'd already decided the world wasn't going to intimidate him. Something deep in Ji-hoon's chest went very, very still. "What's your name?" he asked. His voice came out surprisingly gentle. "Jaden." The boy stood straight, flowers tucked under one arm, and extended his other hand, with a formality that would have been funny if Ji-hoon had been capable of finding anything funny in that moment. "Jaden Brooks. I help my mom sometimes. I'm very good with the roses, but the thorns are tricky." Ji-hoon crouched to the boy's eye level and shook the offered hand. He studied the child's face with an intensity he couldn't have explained and didn't try to. 5 years old, he estimated. Maybe just turned 5. Smart eyes, careful posture, a smile that lived right on the surface, warm and immediate, like trust had never once let him down. "Jaden." A voice came from behind the counter, warm, firm, and so achingly familiar that Ji-hoon's body processed it before his mind did. "You know the rule about running in the—" He stood up slowly, turned around even more slowly. Sarah Brooks stood behind the counter with a handful of flower stems in one hand and a look of gentle scolding on her face that dissolved the moment her eyes moved past her son and found Ji-hoon's. The stems fell. She didn't move. She didn't speak. She just looked at him, and 5 years collapsed into a single suspended second. All the silence, all the distance, all the letters sent back unopened, compressed into the space between two people standing 10 feet apart in a flower shop that smelled like roses. "Sarah." His voice was barely above a whisper. Her jaw tightened. She picked up the fallen stems, set them down again. Looked at her son. "Jaden, baby, go to the back for me. The white roses need sorting. Can you do that?" Jaden looked between them with the alert curiosity of a child who can feel when adults are carrying something heavy, even if he can't name it. "Okay." He pointed at Ji-hoon before he left. "You should come back sometime. We have really nice flowers." Then he disappeared through the back door, sunflowers and all. The shop felt very quiet. "What do you need?" Sarah's voice was professional, deliberate, a wall with a clean surface. "We handle full event arrangements. If it's a wedding, we'd need at least a 2-week lead time for—" "Sarah, stop. Don't tell me to stop. This is my shop." Her eyes met his, and under the composure there was fire. "What do you want, Ji-hoon?" "To talk. We talked. 5 years ago. You said plenty. You know what I mean." "I know exactly what you mean. And my answer is that you're standing in my place of business during business hours. So if you're not here for flowers, I'm going to need you to—" "How old is he?" The question came out quiet and direct. The question he'd been computing since the moment Jaden had looked up at him. The fire in Sarah's eyes shifted. Something colder moved underneath it. She looked at him for a long moment, and in that moment, he saw everything she'd been holding for 5 years. The pain, the pride, the survival, the sheer stubborn strength of a woman who had decided, alone, that she was going to be enough. "He turned 5 in March," she said. Ji-hoon did the math he'd already done 4 times since the aisle, the math that had only one answer. He gripped the edge of the counter. "Sarah, don't." "Is he?" "I said don't." Her voice cracked just slightly at the edge. She pulled it back together immediately. the way someone does who has had a lot of practice pulling things back together. Don't stand there and ask me that like you have some kind of right. I need to know. You need to know. A short, sharp sound escaped her, not quite a laugh. You needed me gone 5 years ago. You needed me gone so badly that you changed your number. You moved your office. You had your people send back every letter I wrote. And I counted, Ji-hoon. I wrote 9 letters. 9. They all came back. She stepped closer, lowering her voice because her son was 20 feet away. But every word landed with the precision of something she had been carrying a long time. Now you're standing in my shop, telling me what you need. He said nothing. There was nothing to say. She was right, and they both knew it. Yes. She said it the way you set down something unbearably heavy. He's yours. Are you satisfied? Satisfied. The word moved through him like a cold wave. He thought about what the last 5 years had looked like for Jaden. First steps he didn't see. First words he never heard. A little boy who told strangers his dad had to go away, but that dads were supposed to come back. His throat tightened in a way it had not done since he was a child himself. He came back the next day, and the day after. He didn't come with gifts, or grand gestures, or the resources of a criminal empire. He came quietly, without his men, and he ordered coffee from the cafe next door, and he sat on a bench, where he could see through the flower shop window, and he watched Sarah work, and he thought about what he was going to say, and mostly he said nothing of it, because he couldn't find words proportional to what he'd done. But Jaden found him on the 3rd day. The boy came outside to water the small plant display on the front step, and spotted Ji-hoon on the bench with the unerring accuracy children have for interesting strangers. He walked over, watering can in hand, and sat down next to him without being invited. You came back, Jaden said. I did. I thought you might. The boy watered a plant that was already very wet. My mom says some people come back and some people don't. She says you can't control which kind a person is. You just have to see what they do. He looked up. Are you the coming back kind? Ji-hoon felt the question move through him like something sharp. I'm working on it, he said. Jaden considered this answer with great seriousness. Okay, he said finally. That's a good answer. Some people say yes right away, but then they don't actually do it. He stood up, tucked the watering can under his arm, and added, My dad didn't come back. I don't really remember him, but I think I look like him. Mom gets a funny face sometimes when she looks at me, like she's thinking about someone else. He shrugged with the easy resilience of a child who hasn't yet decided whether this is sad. She says I have his eyes. Ji-hoon sat very still for a long moment after Jaden went back inside. Then he got up and walked into the shop. Sarah was alone at the counter. She looked up, and something moved across her face. Not softness, not yet, but something less rigid than before. He talks to everyone, she said, by way of explanation. He told me I might have the coming back kind of face. Ji-hoon stood in front of the counter. He didn't perform steadiness this time. He just stood there, without the armor. I know I don't deserve to ask anything from you. I know what I took from you when I left. I know what I took from him. His voice was level, but it cost him. But I'm asking anyway. Let me be part of his life. Not because I've earned it. Because he deserves a father who shows up. Sarah's expression broke open just enough to show how much she was still holding. You want to talk about what he deserves? Her voice came out barely above a whisper. He deserves a father who was there when he had a fever at 2 a.m, and I was alone in a foreign country with no family nearby, and I was so scared I sat on the bathroom floor and cried. She stopped, breathed. He deserves someone who heard his first word, which was light, by the way, because I kept a lamp on for him at night because he was scared of the dark. Someone who saw him take his first steps in our tiny apartment because we couldn't afford anything bigger that first year. Her eyes were steady, but her voice was doing something it was fighting hard not to do. He asked me once. He was 3. He asked me why his friend Marcus had a dad who came to his birthday party, and I had to explain that to a 3-year-old Ji-hoon, alone. No one to look at across the room. No one to share that weight with. Ji-hoon held her gaze and did not look away, because she deserved to have him hear every word of that. "I know," he said. "I know, and I'm not asking you to forgive it. I'm asking you for a chance to show Jaden that the story doesn't end there." Before she could respond, before either of them could say another word, Ji-hoon's phone rang. He glanced at it. Park. He would have ignored it, but Park had a rule. He only called during sensitive conversations when it was urgent. He answered. "We have a problem." Park's voice was stripped of its usual composure. "The Jang organization has had eyes on the shop for 3 days. They ran identification on the woman and the boy. They know who she is to you." A pause that lasted half a second too long. "They know about the child, sir. The information is already circulating." Ji-hoon's back straightened. His voice dropped. "What else?" "Hyejin's investigators filed a report this afternoon. She knows the boy is yours." Another pause. "Sir, we just received a call. The boy is missing. He was last seen outside the shop 12 minutes ago." The phone nearly shattered in his grip. He turned to Sarah. She was already reading his face. Her expression went from anger to confusion to terror in the space of 2 seconds. "What?" she whispered. "What is it? Where's Jaden? Where's my son?" He was already moving toward the door, already calling back to Park, already dismantling every other priority in his life, with the efficiency of a man who has just discovered the one thing in the world that matters more than his empire. "Sarah, listen to me. Lock the front door. Do not open it for anyone except my men. I need you to trust me right now." "Tell me where my son is." Her voice rose sharp and terrified. "I'm going to get him back." He stopped at the door and looked at her with something he hadn't shown anyone in 5 years. Not calm, not command, but absolute, unguarded desperation. "I swear to you, I'm going to bring him back." What followed was 17 hours that rearranged the landscape of Seoul's underworld. Ji-hoon activated everything. Not for territory, not for money, not for the empire he'd spent 2 decades constructing. For one 5-year-old boy who thought fathers were supposed to come back and who still slept with a lamp on because he was scared of the dark. He raided locations. He called in every debt, every favor, every thread of loyalty woven through 20 years of criminal infrastructure, and he pulled all of it toward a single point. His men moved through the city in waves. Informants were found. Intermediaries were pressured. Organizations that had spent years carefully neutral suddenly found themselves being asked, very directly, to choose a side. He called Sarah every 2 hours. Every time she answered on the first ring. Every time her voice was the voice of a woman holding herself together by pure will, refusing to shatter, because shattering wouldn't bring her son back. "Tell me something," she said, the 3rd time he called. "Tell me something real. Tell me you actually know where he is." "Not yet. But I'm close." He was in the back of the SUV, moving fast through streets he'd owned for years. "Talk to me. What does he like? What does he talk about?" A pause, then quietly. "Sunflowers. He says they're the happiest flower, because they always face the sun. He wants a dog named Champion. He makes up stories at bedtime, and he always gives them happy endings, no matter how he starts them." Her voice broke on the last sentence, and she pulled it back together. "He always gives them happy endings." Ji-hoon's jaw tightened. "I know," he said. "This one, too." The location came through at hour 14, an industrial complex on the city's eastern edge. Ji-hoon went in himself. His security team raised objections, and then stopped raising them, because when Kang Ji-hoon moved with that particular kind of stillness, arguments became irrelevant. The confrontation was brief and decisive, and left several men considerably worse off than when it started. Ji-hoon moved through the building with his men, room by room, until they reached the last door at the back of the complex. He opened it himself. Jaden was sitting in the corner of a bare room, knees pulled up, still clutching the handle of the small watering can he'd had outside the shop. His face was tear-streaked. His eyes were exhausted. But when Ji-hoon filled the doorway, the boy's expression cracked open with pure, unguarded relief. "You came back," Jaden said. Ji-hoon crossed the room in 4 steps and gathered the boy into his arms, and Jaden held on with the absolute grip of a small person who has been frightened for a very long time and has just found something solid. "I told you," Ji-hoon said, his voice low, his arms holding on as though the world was going to have to work very hard to get this child away from him again. "I'm the coming back kind." "Dad." Jaden said it simply, sleepily, his head against Ji-hoon's shoulder. Ji-hoon closed his eyes. He had built an empire. He had held territory against people who wanted him dead. He had made decisions that changed the shape of organizations and the fates of hundreds of people. None of it, not one moment of it, had ever felt the way that single word felt. Chairman Yoon summoned him 2 days later. The older man sat behind his desk with the settled authority of someone who had never needed to learn what it felt like to want something that couldn't be purchased. He looked at Ji-hoon across the desk, and he spoke about alliances, about architecture, about the careful structure that had been built over years between their organizations. He spoke about what it would cost if that structure came apart. "The wedding proceeds," Yoon said. "The incident with the boy is handled. There is no reason to alter our arrangement." "I'm ending the arrangement," Ji-hoon said. Yoon was quiet for a long moment. "You understand what you're walking away from?" "Completely. Everything you've built. I built it wrong." Ji-hoon stood perfectly still. "I built it by deciding that power mattered more than people, that the empire was the point. And while I was doing that, my son was learning his first word in an apartment I never saw, and the woman I loved was raising him alone because I convinced myself I was protecting her by leaving her." He met Yoon's gaze. "Whatever I lose by walking away from this table, I already paid a higher price to sit at it." He walked out. The alliance fractured. The empire contracted. Some territory, some alliances, some carefully arranged agreements. Gone. It cost him, concretely and significantly, in the currency his world kept score with. He didn't go back. Months passed. Real ones. Ji-hoon showed up. Not dramatically. Not with the resources of a crime boss trying to purchase forgiveness, but consistently. He was there for school events and bad dreams and the slow, careful work of becoming someone a child and a woman could count on. Sarah didn't make it easy, and he didn't ask her to. Trust, when it's been broken that completely, doesn't return on a schedule. It returns in small moments, quietly, when you're not performing for it. One Sunday morning, 6 months later, he walked through the door of Brooks Blooms, carrying white roses. Jaden heard the bell and came at full speed from the back, launched himself upward, and Ji-hoon caught him the way he now caught him, automatically, naturally, as though his arms had always known the exact weight of this child. Sarah looked up from the counter. There was still something careful in her eyes. There might always be, but underneath it was something else now. Something warmer and less defended. Ji-hoon set Jaden down, walked to the counter, and placed the roses between them. He looked at her without the armor, and without the performance, and without the careful management of how much he let show. "I came into this shop to order flowers for the wrong wedding," he said, "and I found everything I actually needed." He paused. "I'm not asking you to forget what I cost you. I'm just telling you that I'm not going anywhere again. And this time, I mean it differently, because this time, I understand what leaving actually takes from a person." He looked at her steadily. "I won't take it again." Jaden reached up and grabbed both their hands at the same time. He stood between them, holding on, looking up with the certain, uncomplicated confidence of a child who has decided exactly how things should be and fully expects the adults in his life to figure it out. Sunlight came through the shop windows. Sarah looked at the roses, looked at her son, looked at the man who had broken her heart, and then spent 6 months quietly, consistently, without drama or grand promises, choosing her and Jaden every single day. She accepted the flowers. She didn't say anything yet. She didn't have to. Some things don't need to be said immediately. They just need to be true. The three of them stood there as the light filled the shop around them, and for the first time in 5 years, they were exactly where they belonged. If this story kept you until the very last word, this channel is where you belong. Hit that like button right now. You have no idea how much it helps. Subscribe so you never miss a story like this one. And drop a comment below. At what moment did you know Ji-hoon was going to choose his family over his empire? We read every single one. See you in the next story.